deadlift is great for certain things, but at the same time, like for dance, how does that translate, or how does that translate into running or more practical movements?
Definitely, definitely, and it's a lot more specific to dance because we're using our body, so our ability to control our body um, is yeah, it transfers a lot more to what we actually do in our day to day. I think
Yeah,
there's still room for some strength training by all
yeah,
means. I think it's a good like teaching tool as well to teach tension in a lot of ways.
yeah,
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of scope for dancers out there that want to still keep training. So it's not like, oh, now I don't have to train anymore.
yeah,
No.
yeah. Yeah, with like with deadlifts and stuff, with powerlifting, it's kind of what do you think as far as for dancers, like how much weightlifting should they be doing as far as yeah, you have your compound lifts, but then you have your bodybuilding style of isolation work. What do you think is like an optimal combo of those?
It's a good question. So you have to think about it from the athlete's perspective. So from the dancer's perspective, what do they need? What do they want? Do they want um, overall strength and like health gains? And do they only have a short amount of time?
Mhm.
Barbell for sure. Do they
Yeah,
want like more of that? They like more of the bro bodybuilding style body weight splits, and they want to isolate certain muscle groups. And I think that's
yeah,
also useful to teach for popping to be able to isolate a muscle, contract it under load and resistance. Then maybe more of that bodybuilding aspect would be
mm,
helpful. And there's certain things that external resistances like dumbbells and some machines, cables can add a little bit more so than just body weight. It's just a lot easier to isolate certain muscle groups.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so it depends on the dancer in essence, what they want to get out of the training. Do they want like overall health gains? Do they want to build muscle? Do they want just to lift heavy shit because it feels good?
Yeah, 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 man. It's interesting because, like, just like you said, it's all dependent on on the person, as far as what they want, their goals, and that sort of stuff. Because even if you say dancers, right? Even if you narrow it down to poppers or to lockers or to breakers, like everybody's body is different, and also like we compensate in all different types of way. Nobody has the same baseline or the genetics or the mobility or the and also what is it within your style that you want to work towards, whether it's
Exactly.
like as a b-boy, do you want power moves, do you want style? Like style is probably going to require even within that, it's like, do I want more like hip mobility in my CC, or do I want like, does it hurt in this position? Why does it hurt? It gets really kind of start to like really break things apart as far as what you need.
Yeah. I think it's also like you're preparing your body, your tissues, your muscles, two different positions. And one of the quickest ways, and we can like talk about that, is adding some resistance into it. So
Mm,
I think a lot of people are kind of hesitant, or they've been told certain things like, it's going to ruin my joints, or it's just going to leave me stiffer. So the idea is like it's actually the opposite because we're so adaptable, and our nervous system really likes resistance.
mm,
If you look at even with your training, if you have a certain block and you have that fixed point, that resistance is helpful to know where that fixed point is. I think that's one of the things that you teach. So having
mm.
that resistance is helpful for us to know that we can access that range. So in a similar way, if we're in that like a sumo deadlift position with our hips out under load, it's like, holy shit, I'm going to break. Oh, actually, no, I feel more comfortable now. I can access those ranges in this
Yeah,
position, and then I can transfer it over to my dance.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's yeah, what is transferable, and the thing is, for me, I think I kind of worked through a lot of this stuff, through a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of powerlifting and realizing like, as far as growth, you know, like, okay, I want to become a better dancer, but how do I take like this strength that I'm building and really trying to transfer it over into what, you know, like how does that translate into a wave, or how does that translate into a tut, you know, like why do I need to deadlift 350 pounds if I want to do this, you know?
Yeah. There's much less transfer in that case. So it's like, what do you need as well? So some people have more endurance and they're able to handle like long battles or long drills. Others don't. So, okay, so what's missing? Can I improve my muscular endurance? Can I look at conditioning? Can I look at cardio? Is it like I'm puffed out by the end of the session, or is it more like muscular fatigue? And that's where we can go into like individually tailoring recommendations for strength and conditioning that we do for athletes to dancers, because dancers are just as much of an athlete as, you know, those that play on-field sports.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I was always curious about as far as what you're talking about, the adaptation, you know, is like, you know, do I feel tired after a session? Is it cardio based or muscular fatigue, or is it joint pain? All these things that your body's giving you feedback on. As far as, you know, throughout the years when I started popping, you know, I might be out of breath, right? Because you're like, oh, it's my cardio. Well, sometimes it's just breath control too, right? Yeah, it's a huge one. I feel like in the endurance athletes that I study a little bit, and also like through myself, like when I learn something new, I'm holding my breath, right? I'm it's just like I don't know when to breathe, you know? I'm in these compromised positions and I'm trying to figure out when to take a breath, all this sort of stuff. So where is it the efficiency of and the understanding of the movement versus the actual adaptation that you need, you know? So sports specifically, like training the sport versus like training the cardio, you know?
I think there's room for both. I think the priority is definitely the task. So we talk about sports specific. You can't just, you know, like you said, you can't train in the gym and then expect that to make your dance better, because dance is primarily a skill. So we can get better at that skill. And if we just drill and practice and keep drilling, maybe that cardio will build up eventually. Maybe we'll just do the skill better. So then there's like, that's the priority. That's like the main thing. I think that people can get lost in the tumbleweeds of like, oh, I need to like add this little implement or do this specific exercise to get better at dance. No, you just need to dance more and just need to dance better. And look at your training, look at your load management for your training. Maybe you're doing too much too soon of training, and then that's why you're pulling up sore. Or maybe you're doing something you've never done before. It's novel. Your body isn't used to it. It's a new stimulus. That's like the priority. When it comes to training, it's more like a supplement. Like, let's add on top. This is our base. So if someone's really, really unfit, would they benefit from doing any kind of cardio? Fuck yeah. Would that also help? I can swear as well.
Yeah, man. Don't worry.
So they can build up like that aerobic base to then transfer over a lot more. So now their training has become a lot more efficient. So that aerobic training has given them more access, more capacity to do the main thing, which is dance.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The thing that I wonder sometimes too, you know, like with say push-ups, right? And you come and you're trying to do push-ups and you're like, dang, well, you know, when I started I could only do 15. Now I could do 35 in a row or whatever, you know? And is it muscular endurance, or are you learning how to cheat better? You know, it's like, for me, it's like, I've noticed sometimes where I'm like, oh, I'm just not, either I'm doing them faster, or maybe I shift some of the load to my delts, like, or I, you know, relax my core a little bit, or my breath is getting better, or, you know, all these sort of things that are helping me do the task better. But really, it's like with the push-up, maybe I'm trying to do hypertrophy training. I want a more developed chest, but I've figured out ways to cheat the system in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, that's the task of the push-ups. So now you're talking, did you just get better at doing push-ups?
Mm.
So it takes a little bit of lag time before muscles actually start to hypertrophy and get bigger and stronger, but you still get gains. So what we've known is that those gains are mostly nervous system gains, which means that your nervous system is now more efficient to do the push-ups. You've got a lot more capacity to keep building up the push-ups, and the push-up is a skill that you've been practicing. Because if you do a push-up like this, that's a different kind of skill, right? Versus if you keep it like in that straight line. So yeah, many factors involved. We can't just say that, oh, in 2 weeks' time I could do five more push-ups, therefore I'm 5 reps stronger. It's like, not really. Like, yes, and also you're better at push-ups.
So with the nervous system gains that you're talking about, would that be would that show up physically, or is it more of like, what do you mean by nervous system, you know?
Yeah, so what governs our muscles is our nervous system, our brain. Basically, the impulse from my hand and my decision as well to touch my face, that's all nervous system gain. That's not my bicep. The bicep is just like the hardware in a way. And we can improve that so there's the analogy of hardware and software that might be helpful to see, like, okay, we can improve the tissue quality of the bicep and get it stronger. But if I wanted to do a task of touching my face right here, I have to really focus on, that's a skill, because now I've got a slightly different angle each time I touch my face. There's a different kind of, that's the skill component. And then we're looking at the hardware is the muscle tissue component.
Uh-huh. So the skill component is the nervous system training that you're referring to.
Yeah, and they go hand in hand. So we can't be like, I'm going to train my nervous system today. It's like, no, you are also breathing, right? Yeah, so you're training your cardio a little bit as well, and you're also thinking about things, right? Yes, okay, so you're mentally training as well. So we can't separate it. It's like a whole, right? It's like we can't take away this part and just work on that, this part and just work on that. So we should know that a lot of things are working. It's not just the muscle building. It's not just the nervous system.
Yeah. So like when you're developing these training programs, as far as like, maybe they talk about muscular confusion, you know, like maybe it's not the actual thing that's happening, right? But really you're developing different skills. Like, say, just keep push-up example is like doing, you know, different variations of push-ups. And you get sore, it feels like, in new places, right? When you do the new exercise. So is that, those are tears in the muscle, but how does the nervous system kind of, you know, relate to the muscle soreness in different areas?
Yeah, so muscle soreness, DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, you feel it like a day, definitely 2 days after. Yeah. There's a few factors involved with it. The first thing we look at is it a novel stimulus? Does it mean, is this the first time you've ever done this exercise? Then you'll likely get more sore. If this is, did you go to failure? Yeah, okay, so then you're likely to get even more sore. It's kind of a protective response in a way, so that it's like a signal to recover and allows you to recover a bit more. At the same time, you're also causing a little bit of micro damage to your muscles that's needed for them to then adapt. So there is that nervous system like soreness if you just touch it and if you move it. And there is a little bit of micro damage, which is beneficial for you to then adapt, get stronger. It's like, so back again, it's also the hardware and the software involved.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a more complex picture. Yo, there is a mockingbird in this tree. I don't know if you can hear it,
Yeah.
but this thing, it it knows no time, bro. I swear, like I've been talking about getting a BB gun. It's so bad. It wakes me up at like 4:30 in the morning. It's so bad, and people are like, yo, you're so disciplined. You wake up early. I'm like, at this point, it's just because of this thing. But I'm I'm gonna move inside because this thing is
Yeah,
driving me
no,
insane. The thing is it's not just like one chirp. It's like, they have like seven different sounds or something crazy, Um,
yeah, yeah. They
so
just
you
wanted in
can't.
on the mobility talk, man. They wanted to know.
I know. Well, that thing needs to learn how to shut its mouth. That's the anti-mobility it needs. No, but supposedly it's got like, so, my family was talking about like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's singing a song. I was like, do you know why it's singing a song? It's horny. It's horny. That that thing is singing a song of sexual desire, you know? It like all
Yeah.
of a sudden it just became like it's like, oh, you don't, it's like, it's not so pretty anymore. I ruined them. But, yeah, man. So you're talking about the nervous system, and it's been interesting, since being on quarantine. I've been trying, I'll just look up a different like, ab workout every day, right? So, um, most of them are under like 10 minutes. And when I do the new ones, I'm like, dang, man, I'm like really sore right now. And they're just slight variations, but they really tax you, but that, um, have I noticed any gains? Like it seems like my stomach's filling out a little bit more, like the width of the muscles and things like that. And it's not because I'm getting leaner, because the core is not. It's like after that workout, it's like Netflix, but a full bag of popcorn and. But it's definitely seen like the stimulus is affecting it in different ways, but also I think what's really optimal when it comes to like dance and stuff is to have your dance in the back of your mind when you're doing these movements, so that you're learning how to integrate this kind of muscle contraction. Like when I do these ab workouts, whether it's twisting or whether it's crunching, I'm also thinking about when I'm in my natural state of dance, when I'm standing up in my postures, like what does it feel like to flex those same muscles in the stance that I'm used to?
Yeah, man. It's like mindset training. It's just like you're able to relate that position and that contraction to your dance.
Mhm. Yeah, it's super yeah, it's been super helpful, man. Especially also thinking about when you are contracting, also what can you relax, so then it becomes very isolated. And for example, like with shoulder press, or something like that with the kettlebell, it's like, okay, what exactly, when you start pushing things overhead, well, actually a lot of stuff has to be involved. But my left arm is completely free, but everything
Mhm.
stacked underneath it, it's probably got to stabilize something.
Absolutely. And then it's
Yeah.
like you're able to add more or less tension to certain muscles as well, because you've got that like intrinsic body control already.
Mm.
So it's like
Yeah.
just adding more body control now, because you're like, oh, I can isolate certain muscle groups, I can change my posture, my position. It's like, oh, it's feeling it in different spots. Oh, that makes more sense now. Oh, I can transfer that to my dance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all that sort of stuff. And what I started to realize is like I felt like the motivation of like the mobility training that you have to do uh is super important. It's optimal for dancers, because I felt like I was spending way too much time as far as exercising or lifting really heavy weights. I just didn't feel like it was transferable. But I felt like the time spent in mobility work was so, like, I think, like, for you to kind of break down the idea of like conditioning joints would be
Mm-hmm.
super helpful for dancers. Like, to, because the thing I always try and think about is like force is the language of cells, right? Which is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a quote from Spina, Dr. Spina. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So like that ability um to condition around the tissue around your joint and how to do that, you know.
Yeah, so I think the framework that I've found most helpful for athletes and for dancers has been
Mm.
like a few of the like tiers approach. So tier one is looking at the dance, the movement itself. If you can't get into that position, maybe it's because you can just change the position. So you mentioned one of your friends had trouble with neck isolations, and
Mm.
you just gave a cue, like a really quick fix of just elevate your scapula. So you elevate your shoulders up, and now you've got a bit more room to do it versus keeping them down. It's much harder, it's more
Yeah.
tense. That's
Yeah.
like a quick fix. Like first up, if if you can manipulate, change the dance technique to suit you, or if you just need a bit of like technique work from a knowledgeable instructor or teacher, then after that, it's like, what can the joints, what do the joints need for that move? What do they need to handle? What positions do the joints need to be in? Does your wrist in tutting needs like full extension, right? So if it can't
Yeah.
get to extension, that's something that you can condition your joints to get into that extension bit. So then it cleans up that technique for you.
Yeah.
So the idea is like you are strength training in that end range. So to
Mhm.
get that mobility, you need to access it and then control it. And then we can talk about like, okay, why can't I just stretch for hours? It's like, you can, but can you then control yourself in that position? So a
Yeah.
really great example is if you bend your knee into a quad stretch, so like the front of the thigh, and you
Hmm.
stretch it all the way, your heel touches your bum most of the time.
Yeah.
Then when you let go, what happens? The heel comes off because you don't have the strength to
Yeah. No
keep it
way.
there. So it's like so that discrepancy is strength. You lack the strength to get into that extra range for you to access. So,
Yes.
okay, that's something that you can work on now. Rather than spending ages just passively getting into that position, cranking into that position, you're not sending the stimulus that's needed for adaptation for the cells to get the strength to hold it there and contract it there.
Ah. So it's a signal to the cells that allow it to respond. It's not like, so when we talk about like conditioning muscles and we talk about conditioning nervous system, as
Mm.
far as now these are both cells, right? I mean, we're all cells, but as far as on a base level, when you talk about uh, the strength, it's a component. They're both components of strength, right? The
Yeah,
signal and also the hardware, right? You're talking about before.
yeah, yeah. So you can't separate them. You can't say I'm gonna work on my muscle and not my joint. It's like your joint is moving at the same time. So you're conditioning your joint as you're getting it into this range. The idea with functional range conditioning, so that's FRC, from that quote from Andrea Spina, is that it's all just stuff. It's all just cells. We can't,
Yes.
if we look really deep dive into it, they're all just basically very similar. So we're sending signals to them to adapt and change. So when we're doing a bicep curl in the end range, we're working on that joint of that elbow joint. We're working on the muscles that control that position. We're working on the tendons, the ligaments to hold and sustain that position. So we're getting adaptations throughout the whole organism versus just the muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like you know, when I first started like hearing these talks about like stuff, you hear about this term stuff from an expert, from a doctor, from an exercise physiologist like yourself, or like a, a you know, a, well, Dr. Spina is a chiropractor, right? So you're hearing about him talk about like this whole idea that I've been conditioned like in my mind when I'm reading bodybuilding books like back in the day, or things like uh, yeah, anything on the internet, bro science. They're talking about deltoid, rear delt, pec, and trapezius, all, and then you have your lower traps and all this sort of stuff. You're diagramming your anatomy, but then he's going like everything is connected.
Like a
There's no
continuum.
separation between your hand and your foot. It's like all this stuff has trigger points from you're talking about like from the tissue, like if maybe you lack wrist mobility, right? So then you try handstands, and then your handstands, you end up compensating with your shoulder or your rib cage or your spine in some sort of way. That eventually transfers to the way you walk on your feet. Then you start getting all these issues with your feet, but really it started from your wrist. It's like um, all this sort of stuff like somehow has these like breakdowns in your body, right?
Yeah, and that's super important when it comes to positioning for certain moves. So the capacity to hold a certain position, if you don't have the joint ranges of motion to access it, it doesn't look the same. So you can see it all the time. Sometimes it's just someone's structure. They
Mm,
can't really change it too much. For a lot of times, we can still work on it regardless. So you see someone do a move like a cobra, and it looks fucking awesome. Then you see the same move on another dancer, and it's like they just don't have that range of motion to make it look the same. So people are trying to
yeah,
copy, the OG that just had maybe they just also have the structure to do that move and make it look really good. Um, but they won't be able to look exactly the same because of that structure. So it's like, okay, so there's a gap there. How much can we change? How much is like neurally driven? How much can we work on our capacity of our joints? And then also, how much is it just because they look different? They have a longer torso, they have different kind of vertebra in their joints, and it looks different to you. So it's like,
yeah, yeah. It looks it. That's what I say sometimes is like certain styles they look better on certain body types.
yeah,
And it's not. This when it came to like really unpacking FRC or mobility type stuff, it was like shit, man. I come from a world that is consumed with aesthetics. Like dancers, we're consumed with the visual performing art, right? Like we're consumed with the aesthetic of what we look like. But then again, it's like we see someone else do it, but our baseline is different from theirs. But we're concerned with looking like something like that, or creating, or actually, if you want to start from a different spot, we're talking about how do we transfer something that we imagine into our body, but then we see it played back and we're like, if I imagined it different, or it felt different,
it looks better in
so
my head.
yeah, it looked better in my head, or it felt like I was doing it, but that's the big discrepancy between I felt like there was a big gap between the community of dancers and um how they approach dance from a practical, like actual reality perspective, and the ideal or the imaginative way of like trying to look a certain way with
Mm.
actually so I just felt like there's a huge gap.
Definitely. I think the point that you touched on is like some people suit certain styles better than others. So
Mhm.
my structure, for an example, of my wrist is it doesn't really get into that 90 degree. That's really clean for tutting. That's
Mm.
the excuse, but I'm just working with this. So I need to work on my mobility, but some of it is structural. So I can't change the length of my hand. People with longer fingers can kind of get away with a little bit more extension because it looks like they have that structure built in with them. Sometimes
Yeah.
the carpal bones in our wrists are already fused, and it's like it's just genetic. My parents also have this wrist extension, so I'm like, okay, maybe I won't be the world's best putter.
Yeah.
Okay, what am I good at? Maybe I can isolate a bit more, and maybe I have more like robotic style because I have extra tension, hypertonicity, and I am not like as loose as like someone that's doing like a puppet or some boogaloo style.
Yeah.
So finding out that, hey, maybe work with your strengths and just accept limitations. Doesn't mean I can't do a putting routine. I just have to kind of, cheat it a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah. Isn't it's actually like philosophically, it's a real harsh reality to deal with sometimes, right?
Hmm.
It's like in some ways our body chose our destiny. Like it's like, damn it, I wanted to be a tutter, but my wrist is messed up, you know? It's like so how do like so say someone's in your predicament, and I meet a lot of people like this, right? They love tutting, but their wrist is like, they can't get it. How much like is it possible to get it to a flat angle if you really worked on it, and how would you work on it?
I think having the acknowledgement that it's going to take a shit ton of time if
Hmm.
there's going to be any change, number one. Number two, work on your strengths. That's just the wrist. Like we haven't looked at shoulder, we haven't looked at the elbow, we haven't looked at the neck. Maybe they have really great hamstring flexibility that they haven't utilized they haven't used and taken advantage of in their freestyle. Maybe they have really dope hip mobility that they can get some ground moves in. Maybe they can do everything else much better than other students. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, let's acknowledge that there is a limit there. Um, and there's certain limitations there's like a ceiling of adaptation. We can't just keep building weights and look like Ronnie Coleman unless we take a few steroids and have his genetics. So
Yeah.
there's a ceiling like to what we can achieve as human biological beings,
Yeah.
but working with it to maybe accept a little bit of compensation here so then clean up that angle. And then what else can you do with the rest of your body to make it look still aesthetically pleasing and clean and,
Yeah.
with musicality?
Mm. Yeah, man. Don't tell me that, bro. I'm trying to fly, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like it's crazy, man. Like, I do give, certain mobility stuff for wrists, and there's a lot of different stuff, like when it comes to like really strange stuff, you're way more knowledgeable about this, but like for example with the hips, if you're in a lunge position and then you take an elastic band and you put it around your leg, you tie it to the side, and then you create space in the hip capsule, for example, when I do this wrist stuff, even after doing a lot of pull-ups or like maybe I haven't been tutting as much, and like it starts to get a little stiff, it's a little bit harder, but like I feel like there's impingement in here, so whether it's like massaging that out or like trying to get space in there, and then once I can get a little bit of that passive space, then it's like, okay, now we get to work, like that's when we really like you push, you create the passive, that type of pails rails type thing.
Yeah, so that's going to be like the biggest changes in terms of like quick neural hacks, basically. So
Mm.
the idea is like you do something and then see if there's a change. That something can be basically anything. So looking at massage, looking at foam rollers, looking at bands, looking at extended holds. The idea is that change, you didn't really change too much, like structurally. like you still have the same length bones, you still have the same tissues. It's now you've just gotten a bit more tolerance to that position. So you can get stuck on like cranking it out all the time, and like say for instance with your wrist, if you wanted to go like 10 degrees, maybe there is a limit for you, which is not so much a priority because you've already got the 90 degrees. So if you look at, okay, I want to get from here to here, maybe I won't be able to. Maybe no matter how hard, maybe I'm just wasting my time trying all these like tools and implements, and I've just been sold a dream that it's not really reality. And this sucks it sucks to hear this as well. For a lot of people, it's more if we can still build your tolerance to that position. So if you can hold that position at the end range and build your strength there, and maybe build some strength here, so we're pushing against you. And then if you let go, is there any change? If there's no change, let's accept that maybe it's going to take some time. I think that's the first. And then maybe accept that, maybe doing something else to compensate to get that angle.
You mean like, for example, like if you were like more compensating with the rotation of your shoulder, like inward, right? So like say your hand is here, but then you kind of, you do like a external rotation with your arm, right? So then it creates more of a flat angle. I think this is something that is really, because I feel like even with this angle, there's ways, just like you said, to compensate and create. I think that's the real essence of creativity in a lot of ways, is trying to navigate your limitations and your abilities, you know? It becomes a game, because whether it's just compensating like that or actually in illusion, right, is like, for example, if I create a box like this, right, it looks like a box, but look at my arm. That's not like a 90-degree angle, right? It's not perfect, but from this angle, it looks right, you know?
Exactly. It's like a magician, right?
Yeah. You're creating, especially with tutting, you can create depth, you know? Even though from a two-dimensional perspective, it doesn't look perfect. Like, well, it looks perfect here, but if I switched it, the visual, it's like, where's your audience at, you know? So you can make up for these mobility things with, I mean, my wrist is all right, but you can make up for these mobility things. Like even for this, what happens with a lot of people is they'll bend their fingers down and they'll bring their thumb. So they call it duck tuts, right? But like, it's like a duck, right? But if you flatten those fingers out and you so this looks wrong. If I bring my finger down, it starts to look. Oh, we lost him. Anyways, he'll tune back in a second. But right now we're just going over like wrist mobility. Man, a lot of knowledge so far. Just like thinking about the combination of muscle and nervous system training, you know, and like a lot of the stuff that we do is a combination of the two. It's not just one or the other. Yeah. Oh, here we go. He's back. All right. Oh, we got you back, bro.
We're spitting so much truth that someone stopped us. Connection issues.
That's enough. That's enough.
Too much. We can't handle.
We need
Fuck you. You're saying I can't get 90 degrees. I hate you.
Yeah, man. There's all types of stuff that you can do, and like, just like, for example, like the illusion of a wave is like, well, that's not really happening, you know? It's not really happening. It's the combination of isolations that allows it to look illusionary, you know?
That's it. So it's like, you can't just, crank your arm out, like you said. When you do rotation like that, you can't just, expect your elbow not to be out, right?
Yeah. Like there's like a lot of the bone breakers and flexors and stuff that do dance styles, they hit these crazy angles, and I'm like, wow. But a lot of that stuff too, like some of it is illusion, you know. They might do like a shoulder dislocation or something, or they've loosened up all the ligaments in their shoulders, and they can actually do what they're talking about. But also, once they've done that, they can create all types of illusions that make it seem like they're still like dislocated, but it's really just magic tricks, you know.
That's it. Yeah. And they also have that like inherent hyper mobility. Like they're born with it. If you try and get someone who's really fit to do that, like they won't be able to too much. There's a limit to it, but they can still work with like the illusion control to kind of get there.
Yeah. So you think like, so for people that have like a lot of musculature, do you think they can do those bone breaks or no?
Muscles. By the way, can you hear me? I'm getting some feedback.
Oh, yeah. No, I can hear you.
So with muscle, I think it's kind of overhyped that, you know, we see the roided up bodybuilders with huge bulges of arms and like they look like they can't even like wipe their own ass in the bathroom, let alone do a intense dislocation. So it's we definitely can. It's not like the muscles kind of restrict the motion, unless we get into like the extremes of like, you know, roided up bodybuilders that have so much muscle tissue that's in the way. But that's normally an excuse for someone who just doesn't have that mobility. They're like, oh, my muscles are too big.
Yeah. Man, come on, you take away my excuse. You know, most of the bone breakers that I know, most of them are pretty skinny. But also like I also know there's a guy. I'm losing his name. I'm drawing a blank right now. Shit, he's from the UK, I believe. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? But he's actually. What's it?
It will come back. The name will come back.
Yeah. Damn. Oh, but anyways, he's actually really muscular, you know, and he's a contortionist, you know, full out, you know. But I think it's probably more likely that people build muscle after, like, they've maintained a flexibility throughout the, you know, the working out and the building muscle. That it's not like they had the muscle and then gained the mobility or the flexibility to do that. It's way less likely, I think.
Yeah, they can still strengthen in those ranges. So it's not like, you know, they've just been strengthening up to here. They've been working the whole way through with resistance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because, oh yeah, Bonetics, that's right. Sorry, that's his name, Bonetics. Yep. Yeah, it's just like, I really, I deleted all my friends on Instagram and like, because I just was getting a lot of like too much outside stimulus. And he was one of the guys I used to follow, but I haven't added everybody back yet. So,
I've got a question. Would contortionists have more issues with their ligaments? I think it depends. Like if they, as a simple child, they trained for it, just like gymnastics. If they've trained for it for their whole life, they've built up that capacity already. Versus if they like start at a relatively older age, they do a bit too much too soon, they're not ready for it, they pull up sore, then maybe that can lead to more like injuries. But if they've done it for their whole lives, they're just built that way. It's not going to give them like that long-term damage. So the bone breakers that we talk about, they're not injured per se. They're just freaking awesome. They've got great mobility.
Yeah. Is it possible to develop that mobility at an older age, you know, even if you take it slow? Is it something possible to develop? I think possibly, right? But
Possible. It takes longer. That's all. It
Yeah.
takes a long time. Like we're talking like this much gain. It takes like freaking years just for like this much range. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah. Shout out to Money B in the building. Yeah. But yeah, like, this is something that it kind of brings, seeing Money B's name, I think, like, as far as you have the way the dance is kind of developed, from the original generation till now, it's it started off with, kids. That's something that like people forget is like when people were doing this dance, it was in high schools, it was like these kids, like when we're in high school, our physical potential to explore new movement is much greater,
Mhm.
so the dance style itself was created for young kids, so, and also kids that had no knowledge of mobility and like the science behind like joint work, so you're talking about creating a foundation of the dance in what's considered by most practices improper movement, right? But technically, like the philosophy that we probably both have adopted is more like there's no such thing as improper movement necessarily, right? The joints function at certain ways, but as far as how do we condition our bodies to withstand these things that we're the stimulus that we're putting on them.
That's it. So it's a matter of like, how can we prepare as much as possible the joints in that angle and train for it versus like, oh no, that's wrong. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't train that way.
Yeah, like for example, like a real classic pose, like it's called like the W, right? Which
Mhm.
is where you have your hips. Like for people with tight hips, they're gonna blow out their knee like real quick. Like for me, that was my problem. I used to hit the W, and I was like, I had like no hip mobility. Like your hips should be turning internally like a lot,
Mhm.
but what happens to a lot of us is that we put all the pressure on our knee. For example, like I could do it right now. I'll just show. Hopefully it'll see and not tip over. But like just for an example, and I'm cold right now, so this isn't gonna work too well. But if you have the W position, and like if I have my feet pointed, say, damn it, this is not gonna tilt. Uh, so say I have my feet pointed out and I come in, right?
Yeah.
I can actually mitigate it by how much my hips rotate in.
Yes.
And if I don't have mobility in my hips, all the pressure is going to be on the outside or the inside of my knee. Yeah. But you can also cheat this pose by say like you don't want to hit it that deep, right? But like I can push my leg out more. I can make the W wider, so it
Yeah.
becomes more in the hips,
Yeah.
more in the hips rather than the knee. So these are all like what we were talking about before, like with the tuts. If you can only hit this angle, there's ways to compensate. With what the universe gave you.
That's it. And that goes back to the point of like bang for buck, that tier system, that funnel. Can we just change that movement? Can we just seek out a coach, an instructor, a teacher to just teach us, hey, is there something I can do to fix this? And then someone with your knowledge can be like, let's widen the stance. Or let's look at a different way of doing it that will make you reach that position in a much more efficient way and so much more comfortable.
Yeah, 100%. It's for me, it's like I really like. That's why I'm like, you're such a good resource because I feel like this is what the dance world has been starving for forever. Unfortunately, this is a topic, a deeper topic, but it's like you know, what would the dance look like if there was the same amount of money involved in pro sports? Um, and a lot of the information that I try and integrate and you try and integrate is like this stuff is developed for, you know, high level athletes. And to say that we are high level athletes as well, but uh, we never like we weren't able to approach it in the same way because what we're not getting college scholarships for popping, we're not getting, you know, full rides, or we're not getting, you know, pro athlete pay. We don't even, most of us don't even have health insurance. I got health insurance finally, you know, but it's like that's an accomplishment, you know, and I got that through another job, you know, so it's not like um we don't get, especially in the US, dancers are kind of starving for help in a physical way, you know.
100%. And the access to healthcare is like that bar is freaking high, unless you're in that certain, socioeconomic status, or like getting that money and sponsorship from people in like music videos or something, or like there's definitely a lot less funding, which impacts on the information that we get. Because then we get only the information from tradition passed on to us, and that might not be as accurate now. It might have been really helpful back 10, 20 years ago, but nowadays, like, we're kind of wasting wasting resources. We're doing things like inefficiently. We're unable to optimize our training to get us to perform better for dance. So yeah, it's really huge. I think we're athletes. Like, you're basically a pro athlete. The amount of times that you train and you dedicate to your sport, which is dance, you deserve the evidence-based treatment and training protocols and conditioning to better your dance.
Yeah, yeah, the evidence-based, right? Like, you know, it's the same with like I really experienced it first through like the study of nutrition and realizing that like the nutrition research, if you look at who's funding the nutrition research, it's all like diabetic research, you know? So there's tons and tons of studies on insulin. But as far as any other big studies revolving around, you know, the difference between grass fed and, you know, factory farmed, or like, you know, wild caught and, you know, or, you know, organic produce versus non-organic, like you're not going to get that sort of stuff. Or like the effect of pesticides on our food. And no, you're going to get like where is the funding for? And as far as dance, we're we're non-funded. We're not underfunded. We're non-funded, you know? So, the thing is like to have experts like yourself to break down stuff is like for me, it's like you know, even the small platform that I have, like, or the workshops that I give, like I pass on the knowledge that's been given to me. And hopefully, you know, it can save someone's knee, you know, it can save somebody's back, you know, something. It'll make a difference to somebody down the road. And dude, when you're in pain like that, it's like it's like anything that can prevent that is, you know, worth it, you know.
Prevention better than cure, for sure.
Yeah. And so what's your philosophy? Because you know, we take this thing like injury, it's not injury prevention, right? It's injury mitigation, you know, all these types of terms, because there's no such thing as real injury prevention. Because, you know, especially with dance, like we're doing movement that is not like we can design our body to take that pressure, but at some point you're going to be hyped up. You're going to slip, you know, you're not going to do it perfect. It's freestyle, you know? So at some point it's going to get overused and wear out, or, you know, you're just going to slip up. And so when you're recovering from injuries, like, you know, for me, the biggest part was discovering what is good pain and bad pain, you know? How do you distinguish those things?
I think So there's kind of, if we have to define what an injury is it like observable like tissue damage there? And has it been like a really quick, acute, sudden, like you did a move and then it hurt. Then it's like, okay, we need to deal with that a little bit different versus something that's been happening for a while, like it's persisting, chronic is the term. Like there's both pain and they're both real. They both have kind of different approaches when it comes to dealing with an injury. I think that's a huge topic. Like I think pain is real and it can be invalidating sometimes for people if they're like, oh no, it's just normal. I think you should feel that way. So having that like kind of thing like, hey, it really sucks. Can you move? So the first thing is like, can you move? Can you move in with that joint? If you know you can't walk, then maybe that's when I'd go see a professional for that. If you can't move the injured arm or ligament and there's been like a slip, you fell on it, then go see a professional.
Yeah.
If it's like, yeah, it's like it hurts. Okay, can you do it differently? Can you change the angle? Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, how about you calm down going into that end range for today for this training session? Because maybe you did a bit too much too soon with your training, and let's reduce that range. Let's look at other moves to practice. So then they're still able to train, and they haven't been taken away from the whole practice. They haven't like, oh shit, now I'm gonna start catastrophizing and fuck my ligaments are out of place. My vertebrae spit out behind me. I'm broken. I'm weak. I'm fucked for the next few months. So it's like people like that would benefit from, hey, let's look at what you can do. So then we don't get into that